So this is the event Social Media Trends in Politics by Brains of Social Media at BSIS. And why is it called like that? Brains of Social Media, that's me on the one hand as a company, on the other hand as a community I installed to make social media strategy eligible to everyone else. How did this start? I went to Eurocom 2 years ago and I told myself, why is Eurocom every 2 years, but there's no place for all the people who are so passionate about social media strategy to learn something, to meet, discuss, and network. So this is how Brains of Social Media at BSIS started. And why is it called at BSIS? That's because I have a very, very nice and mutual cooperation with the Brussels School of International Studies here in Brussels. That's the Brussels campus of the University of Kent. I did a master's there in political strategy and communication, and that's 1 year ago, 1.5 years ago, depending on how you count it. And together with students, we put up the content strategy and the analysis of what I'm talking about right now, and also in any other means I got supported. And this is also how I got to know Mr. Beigert. Let me introduce Nicholas Beigert up front. Hello. I'm so honored to have you here. You as, just maybe you present yourself, and we are going to hear something about, a very recent analysis you did on this.
Case studies. That's for a bit later, but so I'm starting a module next year at the BSIS in campaigning and advocacy. And I'm also teaching in some other places in Paris at Sciences Po and here in Brussels at the ULB and EX, which is a communication school that is slowly but surely merging with the ULB. Yes, I used to work actually for European Commission, so I'm also a bit used to the Brussels bubble, and I hope that this is also one initiative that will bring closer people working for European institutions, and perhaps you later, once you might find a job here in Brussels and continue to build that network. We launched a think tank a couple of years ago called Protagoras. You see it here. It was actually mainly a spin-off from our university, but the idea was to create a platform both for professionals in communication and also for academics. Because when I did my PhD, I was really frustrated. There was no such place. I had to travel far to meet professionals and practitioners in communication and test my theory and my concepts. So this is what we were trying to do. And this is basically how we met, because this is exactly what you're doing as well. And so today, yes, it's a first also for me.
It's very nice having you here. As you see, this is a very, content-wise, a very nice, combination, and also, I'm just happy that we're doing this together and that you're supporting us with all you can. Thank you.
Pleasure. Thanks a lot.
We'll see you later for a study on how the Vlaams-Belang won the European elections. I will start with an analysis on the general social media trends. So thank you for the introduction, and we'll see you later.
Yep. See you.
Let me just, before we go on with the topics, say thank you to this event space. They are sponsoring this event. Matthias, please come up. Matthias, let's get him upstairs. Matthias is from Impact Media, and I'm happy that you're having us.
I'm happy to have you guys, and I'm personally overwhelmed how many people came. So thanks to you. When the weather is that beautiful, it shows a huge commitment that somebody makes the effort, if you know what I mean. I'm going to keep it short, but just thanks, and kudos to you for making a good content.
Well, thank you very much for that too. So let's just jump right in with the first content. So I I already told you a bit about me, so I don't want to bore you with much more. You know what I set up, you know what I put up, and why we're here. So, I'll start the analysis part. What did we do? So in January, I first sat together with the BSIS students, and we asked ourselves, how can we approach an analysis on what to do and on what politicians did. And we're not like into, oh, this is the topic that interests us. We're like, how can we approach this scientifically? And the actual only very sound scientific approach is to look at the whole stream, which in this case is all the MEPs on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and what were the posts that were put out and how did people react. And this is basically the analysis we did right now. I'm kind of, this is a concise version of it. Whenever you feel like getting to know more, then just come to me and talk to me. So let's start with Facebook and the first thing that we will look at. Can we go to the next slide? Thank you very much. Facebook. So the first thing we looked at in Facebook, and we will see that in the other networks too, is how did people interact. Interaction is a key to us for social media, because social media is the first sphere there where the communicators and the public start a channel of bidirectional communication. So when looking at social media, and especially looking also at politicians' social media, I always look, do they react? Do they interact? And what is the connection to the people out there? Are they just sending out stuff, or are they actually interacting? So this is the main driving point, and this is also why we chose these metrics. This is how it looks if you look at all the stream, which is kind of get to be a bit overwhelming. So we cut it down to the top 3 interactive actions. One could also do 5, but 3 is such a nice number. Why not stick to 3? So first of all, it's the interaction that we're looking at. Thank you. The interaction that we're looking at. So the top performing posts as concerns interaction are from Elsi Katainen. She's from Finland. Arndt Kuhn and from Germany, and Isabella Adinolfi. This is the chair I run against. Katainen is in the right-wing spectrum. We will see a lot of populist posts in this analysis. She uses a lot of emotional language, many pictures, and that's how she gets to be very in the interaction top 1. On the second step, we now see Arndt Kuhn. Arndt Kuhn, he is in Germany, in the Social Democrats, and the Social Democrats did not perform very well. He actually sticked a lot to the values and like everything that people should think about should be the right contents in a campaign, like, oh, that's what I stand for, and this is Europe. I'm not very extreme, just posting it, but he's not getting a lot of positive reactions. But this is kind of drawing back to the SPD not being as popular in Germany in general. This is already this is a very German thing at the moment. But as you see, whenever I'm German, maybe you recognize it from the accent. Many people do. If not, you know now. This is really data driven. So if there's a German in there, it's because it's the most interactive post, and not because of German. Yeah. So let's go on. The next category is the most likes. Interactions is all about I put something out and how do people actually talk back. Likes is like the first step of commitment. Like as social media strategist, you think like is the first step of commitment before you do anything else. So the most liked channels posts were, well, Nigel Farage. We will see him again quite sometimes too. He's in this top 3 2 times. What's interesting to see here, and this is why I love content-driven analysis. This is just a profile update picture. So many people just when they think about posting stuff online, it's just about what post do I do? Do I do a picture? Do I do a video? But actually, here's like just an updated profile picture with a very clear message. Of course, the message is important. You will hear more about that from Mr. Weigert. But still, it's a means. Like he used the profile picture function to reach the people in a different way than they're used to, and it was very popular because he reached them. There's one thing I did not mention yet. The overall analysis of these top 3 posts are all from the last week of the elections. We will see people saying thank you for voting. That's because it's the last week of elections, and of course people voted from Thursday on. So just to put that in the right perspective. Let's go on. So if you are in social media, the third pillar we decided to do is the profile growth. When you have a big page, it depends. When you have a big page, you reach more people, but do you reach enough people according to your size? Like, let's say you have 1,000 followers and you reach 100 people, that's 10%, which is good. But if you have 100,000 people and you reach 100 people, it's not good. So you always need to put that into perspective. I tried some complicated math stuff to see. Well, isn't it still good if there's a high percentage of a big one because if you're small, let's put it like that. If you're small and you reach 1,000 people, it's easier than to reach. And the 1,000 people are 10%, it's easier to reach it than that high percentage than if you're big. But that's really tough. If some brain is out there who's really into doing this math thing, I'm happy, just approach me wherever you are, right here or online. So for right now, we stick to who grew the biggest to see how well can politicians persuade people to follow what they say, to make them like you and want to get to know more of you. In this case, we see the growth weekly versus an absolute growth. So on this left side, we have Patricia Tora, Sophia Sakura, never pronounce these names, Sophia Sakurafa and Jan Olbricht. And on the right side, Nigel Farage, Martin Sonnenborn, and Harold Wlimski. So you might recognize Nigel Farage. He had a lot of trending posts that were in all the other categories, so of course he's in the biggest growth. So let's look at the less expected people a bit more. Harold Wlimski, we're talking about the last week before the elections when the madness in I'm live on the internet and I'm saying madness. Need to think about what I say, like when there's not like more than 20 people listening, where you can. So you all know what happened in Austria. So of course he used this opportunity. He put a hashtag saying "Jetzt erst recht," meaning now. Okay, it's a hashtag, so of course it was published in German. If in English, it's like now we're putting much more energy into our mission, which in this case was putting Strache as victim, and that way like making people to go vote for his party. A second person I'd like to mention is Martin Sonnenborn. Martin Sonnenborn is a German who started a party for the fun of it already in the last election period. He actually is a satiric. He does satirical politics, and he actually got a seat last time. He still is without any party. He's his own party. He says that he's voting yes and no, always like it's a pattern, like yes no. That's how he votes. So he's like opposing the whole idea of why all the other members of parliament get together. Let's just to describe his way of how he does politics. You should look him up. You can learn quite a lot, because one of the things he does is he interacts with people online, and that's what many people right now do not do. I mean, I'm not saying people who make fun of the system should use their fun to get reach, but I think we're here as people who want to learn stuff, and this is why we put up the analysis that he actually did a video together with a very famous YouTuber who also does interviews, and he interacts with people. We are going to see that in the next analysis step too. So that's what one can learn, because this is one of the lessons that we've also seen in Germany. Like the examples I bring, of course, are from Germany because I'm living there. Whenever somebody is like, "Oh, I have another example to tell," go ahead. It's not go on and listen to me all the time. Thank you. If you want to speak up, do so. In Germany, we're not that into talking to YouTubers that much. Let's put it like that. I will go on. The Twitter. For Twitter, we see that there is actually a surprise at the top performing interactions post, which is from Carolina Hunset. Nathaniel is of course on this whole Brexit talk and putting Farage as victim, and you know the narrative. So here we see one of the typical things, like emotion is what people drives, and that's also what I've seen with my former work doing analyses for German institutions. Whenever it's about emotion, people interact a lot, and not telling you to instrumentalize this, but if there is a story, an emotional story to tell, that's in the scope of whatever organization or company or person you are, then it's a guarantee that this will make people interact. Also interesting here, it's a video. It's a Twitter video that's actually on the top two interactions here. So Twitter and video is sometimes not seen as that that combining, but but in this case, it actually worked. Of course, it's all about the story, but well, it's not that a video does not work. In the contrary, I can also tell so from other analyses. So let's go on to the likes, I guess. Likes page, right. Well, who could have guessed? Again, Nigel Farage. We will talk about populism in politics a lot in the second part, also with Mr. Weigelt, so let's keep it at that for the moment. And go on to the next slide, the growing channels. Well, of course, Carolina Punset, the one with the emotional picture about the death of her dad, is in the top growing channels in that week. That helped a lot. I'm so sorry, helped a lot. It seems so weird saying that in that context, but like I would say it in that without any other content. So let's keep it at that. Martin Schürdewan talked a lot about climate change and distress at sea. So he was in the whole sphere of, well, climate change is the topic we should go for. Yeah, we will talk about how that went in Belgium later on, but I can tell you in Germany, the one party that actually included climate change in their stories, which is the Greens, they like won the elections in Germany, kind of, because they like grew massively because they put that topic. So that's how we see that within Europe it can be so different what you put out and how people react. And well, after all, Martin Sonneborn, I already mentioned how he, well, gets very popular in social media. One last thing that I want to say here is that he's not only going to other YouTubers to present himself, and I'm saying this example because he puts his face into the streams where people are. And I mean, we're talking about social media trends in politics, and I'd say that's what politicians, that's what could be a thing to do for many people, to not just make own channels grow, but when it's about reputation, then you go to where the other people are. That's how YouTubers grow their channels. They visit each other and they say, hey, go over to that channel, go over to that channel, or because he shows his face in the video, people are like, who is this? And they Google him and they're like, oh, what does he do in Europe? That's funny. I want to follow him, you know. But you need to put your face to spaces where people are that don't naturally get in contact with you. And then once they are on your channels, you need to interact with them. And Martin Sonneborn is very quick at interacting, actually discussing with his followers on Twitter, which made him grow a lot. And yes, of course.
Who's the YouTuber who interacted with Mr. Sonneborn?
It's Herr Newstime.
What kind of content?
Well, Herr Newstime is a YouTuber in Germany who he's kind of the trending topic guy. Whenever there's a trending topic, he's the first one to comment on it. You may not agree with him what he says many times, and he's not actually a populist. He's just like, it's like, I wouldn't say it like that. I would, you know, but he's always the first. He's like, whenever like he sees a trend hashtag on Twitter, he's like, I'm doing a video, and he's the first one, and that's how he grew. And I think like after some years, I've seen him the first time 3 years ago, and well, now he is. This video with Mr. Sonneborn was actually very professional for this YouTube sphere. I need to speed up. Instagram, it's actually the most interesting field when we talk about trends. Well, after all, I mean, there were 750 MPs, and 175 of them actually have a professional business account to spread their news. There are some 100 more that actually have some, but they're not really Instagram accounts I would count as like professional page. So 175 are business accounts. That's where I cut the line, because then you can access it via an API. The Instagram open, like to put it in, well, to analyze it, and that's what's up. But I think it goes into the story of be where the people are, and if we look at demographics, it's about the 16 to 25-year-old people, and of course they are getting older who use Instagram. Actually, even the 30s always depends on the topics, of course. So you need to put your face out there too, and that's what these politicians did. In the case of Margarete Auken, quite successfully, we see that. Also she talked a lot about climate change. That this was her main topic, and she landed into the top interactions with 2 posts. That actually do not seem like Instagram at all. I mean, this is a news article, and the other post is like there's multiple photos, but it's actually it's actually quite entertaining. So it's not typical, but it's about, I think she's in a field of there's not so many people around her, and whenever you're in a social network and there's few other people who talk about that subject, then you're quite big, because everyone who's interested in it, they will follow you. And I think that's what happened here. This is just like a personal conclusion we did in the group. That's always what you do, but I mean, this is the facts, and then you can draw your conclusions and think, what do I do now? Sirpa Pietikin from Finland. This is just a thank you for voting. So, it's an emotional thing, and it also is a point of I connect to you. I thank you. I value what you do. I'm not just there, but I know that the people who follow me are also there. So I value you. That's the pure message of this, and it should not be forgotten. But many people just don't do it, and it's the easiest content to do. Just to say thank you. It doesn't take much, but it's. And she did it in a very nice way. We all know this. Last slide on the analysis is the top likes. This is, who wonders that this picture got in the top post? It's a very nice picture. It's like a pure Instagram. What do you want to see on Instagram? It's just a nice picture. We like it because it's nice. So she got into the top pictures, but it needs to be professional photographer pictures. You can't do this with a smartphone. There are many other examples, very bad smartphone photos of people on Instagram in this field. So there you see, you do nice pictures and people will value it. Again, Angelo Ciocca. He's from Italy. He just posted. The quality is it's him and it's a picture. So
It's all that was
Yeah. Well, I mean, it draws to thank you for the comment. These top, like the top and the second top, are actually a very interesting mixture, because he's like very anti-European. So I guess we can explain it by people like him, because his context is like they like the stories he tells. So of course that vote, and they're like, oh yeah, we want to spread the word. He can use it because people are in this whole context of anti-Europe. And actually, Matthias was very pro-European, which is then nice to state that it's not all about populism, it's about the whole mixture of things. Also, Timo Burton, to round it up, Timo Burton is befriended with Pete Sneak, who is also a famous YouTuber, and actually the people who follow him, they said it's so sad that the SPD in Germany was performing so bad because they actually like him from his social media presence. That's it for the analysis. I want to check the clock. I did not. We're on a tight schedule. Yeah?
It's 10 to 8.
10 to 8. Okay. Yes, I talked for quite a long time now. Thank you for still bearing with me, putting out content and wants to go on that. Okay, two people. Are the other ones interested in getting to know if I want to do it? How should I go on? Please raise your hand. Okay, it's more than half. So let me spend 10 minutes on that, and then we'll leave the stage to Baiger to discuss on the politics. I think what he says adds up really nice with the general strategy part. So let's do it. Yes, let's go on. So this is a general way how you put up a social media strategy. I will focus on the planned contents part in here, but all what we will do in the future brands of social media activities will center to one of those points, of course. But let's go on and just quickly tell you the other points so you know what to expect. Of course, you first need to set yourself a strategic goal. And by the way, if you join the Brands of Social Media community on the blog, then you will be able to access all those files. So if you want to look it up again, go ahead. The typical 4 ones, like brand awareness, emotional appeal, participation, and sales, that's like the typical marketing terms. I personally added another one that I think is very valid for the political field, which I called claiming, because many people ask themselves, should I be on this network, should I be on that network? I actually can't put out content on all. It's the same for me, for the Brands of Social Media. You will see I'm actually on all the channels. We are on all the channels, but on Instagram there's just 6 posts. And I think it's a status of you get a kind of feeling what it is, you open it, it's there, and nobody else can claim it. That's why you need to claim it, and that's what I want to say. So let's go on. Next is you want to create a vision. And I specifically said that I'm here because it's not about I want to hear myself talk for 30 minutes in a row and say like there's like a room and there's people talking, come here. Would you have come here? Yeah, I guess not. So it's about the creating a place for people to learn, to meet and to connect. This is why I called up this the event as it is, and I think this is the feeling that you all get when you listen to it. There's a content part that is interesting for you, but also you want to go to a place to not to be able to interact, and that's the vision that everybody needs to ask themselves: why do I do what I do? And to get inspired, this is not a video to watch right now, but you definitely should do it. It's from Simon Sinek, and start with the why, because he says it's basically what I said. I translated it to the Brands of Social Media, and he does an example on Apple, so you should watch it. It's very entertaining. It's a TED talk, from one of the. Yeah. Let's go on. That's his. Yeah. But watch the video and you'll know what to think. Next, you should create a target audience. You should know who's the one who follows me. I mean, on politics, I talk to people and they're like, we actually don't know what to do. Do we want to attract journalists? Do we want to attract constituents? Do we want to attract, we actually don't know what we want to do. And you know at which point you need to think about it. All the rest flows after you did that decision. That's gone. That's also how you analyze right now. Let's say I want to reach more journalists. Do I have journalists in my Twitter stream? No. Okay, so I need to change something. Or yes, oh, I already do what I do. Maybe now I should start to reach constituents because I already reached the journalists, and you know. So let's go on. That's also how you set the channels and goals. On the next slide, I prepared an overview on which kind of content works with which channel, and the thing is, you should ask yourself, what am I good at? And it's best if you're good at video, because video is good for all the channels. But if you're good at pictures, it's good too. So well, that's what. Yes.
And it's still pictures.
Yes, it is. Build means pictures.
In German.
In German. This is my hidden German lesson for you. Yeah, there you go. You learned already one thing, goal achieved for me. Good. So let's go on. Now you plan the contents in the media budget, and now I'm like showing you something that helped me a lot, and I think this is the way to go. To get out of this, oh, I need a post for tomorrow rhythm, because it's really annoying. Let's go on. To my mind, there's four. You can see it not very well. There's four parts that's like your contents are mainly that. Agenda setting topics, so the topics that you always talk about. Trending topics means special days you use, like Women's Day. News is, well, something if you do a cooperation, and topics as strategic communications are then, for example, political campaigning. Or if you do an event and you talk a lot about it, but you still need to talk about the other stuff. And strategic communications, by the way, should be 20% and the rest 80% to make your people not go away. Next slide is then the flow, how it all comes to a post. And that's basically it, until you think, okay, so but how does this get online? When I do a strategy for people, and they're like, okay, how am I going to fill the next 3 months? Then, Matthias, please go on. Then I just put up, like, it's an Excel sheet, and I fill the spots with how many posts do I want to do, two spots, and I fill them to have like a colorful thing. Very playful. I fill 20% with the strategic communication, and the rest with the other pillars, and that's it. It depends, of course, on the ideas you have. But once you're like, what are my pillars? Then you can just fill it in, and you're like, okay, tomorrow I'm going to do something about agenda setting. What are the topics I care about? And then already the ideas flow. That's basically it. Let's go and jump to the circle again. Just to put it in order, you measure your success, you then see if what you put up is worked right or not, and then you start the process all over again, but like after half a year or so, to see if what you did actually make a change. That's it for the strategy part. For anyone who wants, I cherish the time you take to be here. My cards are in front. I give a 30-minute free consultation for everyone who wants to have a checkup on their social media channels. Grab your card, and then we can talk on Skype, and I can that's my offer for you as spending your time here. So without further ado, let's welcome Mr. Weigert on the stage. stage, and we are happy to hear about his case study on the Vlaams Belang and how they could win the elections on Facebook. I will be back later.
I think we just thank you first of all. Thank you.
I need to change the presentation.
Yes, we just need to do that quick technical change. All right. I'll try to be short because you're probably all hungry or looking at the wines actually from some German region that I know very well, so you should try it. And yes, let's start right away with that presentation. So it's a short case study because you probably followed what happened during the European elections in May, and there was of course one very shocking phenomenon or shocking result for lots of Belgian citizens. It's the score of the Vlaams Belang. The Vlaams Belang is an extreme right party, and some people almost forgot about that political party because the last results were not that great in formal elections, and suddenly they had a huge success in these last European elections, and as you know, all European elections were combined with the federal elections and also with the regional elections. So it was a triple success for them, and they are the second party now in the Flemish Parliament, and also one of the strongest parties in the federal parliament, so at national level. So how to build a coalition with these results, we still don't know, but we're used to run a country without a government, as you know. That there should be a special module on that at BSIS, how to run a country without politics. Yes, maybe we could go to the first slide. So Facebook, of course, and social media were key in the success of that political party. And I have some numbers here, so I'll tell you more about that in a minute. But this is the president, the actual president of the political party of the Vlaams Belang, Tom van Grieken, and he's 32. He's a young guy. He has not a lot in common with the past of the political party. You have to know also that that party had to change its name beginning of the year 2000 because there were there was persecution. Well, they had to dissolve the party actually because it was labeled as racist, and for good reason. So from Vlaams Blok, it rebranded its name into Vlaams Belang, so Flemish interest, if you want a translation. And the last years were also very important for the party because they really performed a rebranding with new political personas, new leaders, and I'll tell you more about that in a minute. So we could move to the next slide. So I told you the Vlaams Belang was very present, that's an understatement, online. They were very active on social media, especially on Facebook, and these are some posts of the party, and we can, yes, and just to give you an idea about the money spent, because money is, of course, as we say in French, the nerve of the war, le nerf de la guerre. You see in the results from all European parties that the Vlaams Belang spent was second in the number of euros spent for that campaign, with more than 700,000 euros for its social media campaign on Facebook. So compared with Podemos, well, Spain is a slightly bigger country than Belgium, as you know. So imagine what that means for a country like Belgium to have a political party that spends that much money. And just to show you the next Belgian party, it's the N-VA, the New Vlaamse Alliantie. So they are far behind. And just to give you just a glimpse of the type of videos that you can find on social media, we don't need the sound, but you know, in Belgium, especially in Flanders, we love bicycles, cycling, and this is an advertisement from that party, the Vlaams Belang. So you see the Flemish cyclist, and there's a German guy and a French guy, and of course he's too slow. Why is he too slow, the poor Flemish cyclist? Well, because he's not alone on his bicycle. There's a Walloon sitting just behind, and as you see, he's lazy, so he's not doing anything, not working, and so this is a metaphor for Belgium. Okay, so the Flemish worker and the Walloon, unemployed fat guy sitting behind. So you see, it's this type of communication that was very, very successful on Instagram, on Facebook, and just to show you a little bit, you probably know that there's an ad library on Facebook that you can all access now, and it's super interesting because you can look at who they are actually targeting. So, for instance, for that video, you see that it was more the men that were targeted, but then also a lot of youngsters. And one of the surprises, perhaps, of these May elections were that the Vlaams Belang was very successful in the category of first-time voters. Okay, so actually voting for the NVA, the NVA, the New Vlaamse Alliantie, is almost now seen as there's almost a generation gap, if you want, between the two parties. So this is new, and of course, being present and hyperactive on social media is one way to target these youngsters. So yes, we can move to the next one. I just for the context. It's we can run it because we don't have the sound anyway. But maybe perhaps last year, perhaps you remember that there was a hearing at the European Parliament, and Nigel Farage was you can read it at least, was facing Mark Zuckerberg, and you will see that at some point he says that he's spending a lot of time on Facebook, and that obviously his political action and endeavor is mainly using that channel, and at some point he will also tell Mark Zuckerberg that he's actually his best client, so that populist parties or at least anti-system parties or parties with a very strong message that are do not have access to traditional media, it's of course for them it's a miracle to have Facebook and social media and to be present there and to reach the right targets. Well, we can move to the next one. It's just all this is not new. There was a groundbreaking campaign 5 years ago in Belgium. It's actually the other party, the other Flemish nationalist party, the NVA, that really took that professional turn, and they used, for the first time in Belgium, it's actually not something that you see that often. They used a professional communication agency to design their campaign. Normally, it's something that you would do within the party, would hire the people, and then at least be sure that the person that work on the campaign are committed to your program and your agenda. Well, 5 years ago, the NVA, they used a branding agency. The name of the agency is called Brand Home, and Erik Salens is I think is still the CEO of that agency, and he actually published. It's really interesting, by the way, a little book, and you can download it online about all the strategy, and you see actually that he has a V that is burned in his in his face, and because the whole campaign was designed around that V, because V in Flemish is the V for Flanders, Vlaanderen, for progress, vooruitgang, and so they used the V a lot, and of course the V for victory, and so it was a very professional campaign. And actually, what what you could say today is that the other parties, and especially Vlaams Belang, learned a lot from that campaign and now applied the recipes and had a lot of success with exactly the same strategy today. So what's really important in that campaign, and what you saw with the Vlaams Belang, is that there's a very strong discipline. So you do not have the decentralized effort with people and candidates doing their own little campaign on the side. It's really one strategy, one very coherent and a strategy that is being followed and carried out by the whole party. We can move to the next slide. So I told you there are some young leaders, and Tom van Grieken is one of them. And of course, you're all also part of that generation, even younger. They are digital natives, so they know how to use social media, which is a huge difference with some other leaders and some leaders that you presented. So this is Tom van Grieken, and on his right, Dries van Langenhoven. So he's 26, and he's a political star in Belgium, at least in Flanders. Very controversial political leader. He's actually he was still a student a couple months ago, and he launched an organization called Shield and Vrienden. So it's Shield and Friends. I will not go into the story of that organization, but it's let's say that it's sort of linked to the identitarian movement in Europe that you see in some countries. All right, so it's defending Flemish identity, defending our values, tradition, conservative, and extremely good, and it's skilled and talented with social media. All right, so he's also obviously a digital native, and you could almost say that he's a community manager. So he knows how to use social media, and at some point he decided to join not the Vlaams Belang, because he doesn't want to be a member of that party, but just to be the candidate and the leading figure of the party in one province we have here in Belgium. So it's almost a form of co-branding. That's already a star, someone that is a brand. Dries van Langenhoven is already a political brand, and he's joining the Vlaams Belang. So that was something that was also new, and of course he brought all his fans with him. And if you compare it with some other countries, you could say that he's a leader from the alt-right movement here in Belgium. Okay, so you know what the alt-right movement is. It's what you saw in the Trump election, what you saw also in some other countries, and he knows also the vocabulary, the terms. He's using a lot of memes. He has a whole fan base of youngsters that do also his communication, and he's also developing what you could call a counter-narrative. So at some point there was a very negative documentary on his movement and on him on the Flemish television, on the public channel, and he's always very fast and quick in developing some videos on YouTube. He's a vlogger actually, and he actually almost gave a lecture on how the framing takes place on public television. So the leftist framing, the framing that of course goes against his ideas and his movement. So that's also something very important, is because he's targeting youngsters, people from his own age group. We all know that these students, most of them, all the youngsters that vote for the first time, they don't watch the news like our parents did and or older generation did. They are on social media, and so they will see these videos. They don't really care about the documentaries or on the news or the evening news. This is something that will directly speak to them and use their channel of communication. And this is his organization, Shield and Vrienden. And actually, just to make it very, very short, there was you see that they all have that number. That's a year, and that's where it was in the Flemish history. It's a very important year because it's the year of a battle between the Flemish, at that time, people living in Flanders against France, and so they were very proud because it was a Flemish victory. So you see, it goes goes back to the Flemish identity. And they have also this power military organization almost in the training, and you see that it goes far beyond just some political involvement. It's almost it's something that you could compare with very hardcore scouting. Maybe we could go to the next slide. This is the video that they were doing before Dries van Langenhoven was actually joining the Vlaams Belang. And this is just to show you that he knew exactly what he was doing, and he understands the tools, he understands the channels of communication, he has that age group with him, and this is an action that they were doing in Ghent against another event that was taking place at the same time, a pro-refugee event. So they were trying to disrupt that event, and they were having all these guys joining him, and anyway going to that place. And so I told you, he's a community manager, he's a vlogger, he's a digital native, and he's really good in creating a community. And he's taking that community online, and that community is, of course, expanding. And this is also a reason for his own success. Just to give you some numbers, Tom van Grieken, the president of the Vlaams Belang, he had, approximately 27,000 followers on Instagram, and Dries van Langenhoven has almost 40,000 followers. Bart de Wever, who's probably the leading politician in Belgium and in Flanders, has 26,000, so less. And the Prime Minister of Belgium still right now has 18,000. So you see, there is a gap, a generational gap there. Yes, we can go to the next one. So I told you it's a form of co-branding. So one major reason of the success of the Vlaams Belang is actually this guy. It's the fact that there was a co-branding between the Dries van Langenhoven brand and the Vlaams Belang. So youngsters don't really care. It's like watching a show on television. You don't care if your favorite show is being broadcasted on that TV channel or the other TV channel. Sometimes you can move from one TV channel to another. So it doesn't really matter. The important is to have the community, the fan base, the followers that follow the person, the leader, the political persona, and that's exactly what happened. So he's from the list Vlaams Belang, but he's an onafhankelijk kandidaat, so he's an independent candidate. All right, that's really what matters for them. Yes, we can move to the next one. And I told you, he's really good in branding. So he's always wearing these socks, so Flemish socks, and this is, by the way, the logo of Seal and Brinden, of his organization. So you can buy these socks as well. So it's really a huge branding exercise and effort, and that is also using the type of clothes that they use there. You will see that most of these young guys at the Vlaams Belang, they're always dressed in suits, very like almost Mad Men actors, and this is also part of their image. Okay, so yep. And then this woman, this person, you probably know her, Marine Le Pen. So I told you that targeting the youth through co-branding was one strategy, and then targeting also French-speaking voters through another type of co-branding, and this time it was using Marine Le Pen as star, basically, and she's actually reading the magazine of the Vlaams Belang. But it's bilingual now, so it's probably the first time that Vlaams Belang is putting so much effort in trying also to seduce French-speaking voters, because Vlaams Belang is the Flemish interest, so by definition it's voting against your own interest if you're not Flemish. But anyway, since the main message has, it's a little bit of what happened in Italy. At some point, you had the Lega Nord that changed its software, becoming the Lega, and so the main message was not the independence of Padania anymore, but was the danger of migration. And this is exactly what happened also at the Vlaams Belang. And so Marine Le Pen was co-starring, or was actually acting in one of the propaganda videos of the Vlaams Belang, and of course there were some Flemish subtitles, but it was in French. So, and if you go to the next slide, yeah, I mean it doesn't really matter, because you see that if you look at the ad library, this time it was, you don't see it here, but this is Brussels, so it was mainly targeting people living in Brussels and speaking French. All right, so and again, this is a perfect example of co-branding. You have the Rassemblement National, the party of Marine Le Pen, together with the Vlaams Belang, and Nos gens d'abord, which is all people first, the slogan of the Vlaams Belang, but translated in French. So, just in a nutshell, these were some strategies that were used, and that explain a little bit the success of the Vlaams Belang. So, targeting young voters, first-time voters, using channels of communication that young voters use, trying also to bring and to really put forward some new faces, young faces, digital natives, and that they know what they do. They know what they do, and also trying to connect with existing community, or tapping into existing communities of political activists. This is what I had to say. I think that's it. Yeah, thanks a lot, and this is what explains also the success. Thank you.
So, should we keep this for
the first slide? The first slide.
I guess the first slide is nice and good.
It seems like they're doing fine on the publicity front anyways.
Yeah. There you go.
That's more the kind of publicity we prefer, I guess. So, Mr. Garrigan, thank you very much for your presentation. Let us sit down for some questions at the end. I will keep what I want to ask very short, because I want you to ask questions too. I told you I am German, and in Germany, the big parties lost, and the one party that won, or that gained a lot of followers, were the Greens. So when we prepared this event, we talked about the Belgian parties, and that they actually totally went for the climate change as topic. But as it seems, they totally lost. So, or they were not popular with it. So it's a kind of it's a big contrast. What happened in Germany and in Belgium. Two countries that are just side by side by each other. So, what is how do you think that could happen? And what would you tell the big parties in Germany that lost so much to change?
Well, first of all, I don't think that the Greens did that. That the result was that negative. I think they were actually one of the few parties that
in Belgium,
that did a better score in the last elections than before. So for them, it was an electoral success. It's just that you have to see this. It's what I was mentioning earlier with the media. You know, you have a lot of voters nowadays that are not really using traditional media as former generation were doing it, and or using them. So I think what we discovered with the success of the Vlaams Belang was that actually we know now that there is an echo chamber, in a very big echo chamber with a lot of young voters that did not really care about the official media narrative that was really putting climate change at the first place. It's what we call the priming effect. The priming effect in the traditional news channels was climate change and the environment, but obviously for a lot of voters and of the younger generation, it was not the number one issue. The number one issue was probably migration or identity. So this tells us something. It means that the public space is now segmented, it's divided, and if you are a journalist and if you are a political leader, you should understand that fragmented public space and that public debate does not only take place in the traditional media but also elsewhere. So this could be one explanation, is that suddenly we discover something like probably people discovered in the United States, where Trump wasn't seen as so successful in the media just before his election. I think the message to traditional parties, it's of course probably a different message. There are some political parties that look. I mean, there is a phenomenon in Europe. It's the crisis of social democracy, right? So the SPD in Germany, of course, has some leadership problems. But behind the leadership issue, you have not only the narrative, but almost the software of the social democracy that doesn't really has the same appeal than it had a couple of decades ago. And you see that in some countries, like in Denmark, or even in Germany, in some political leaders, in Flanders as well, people are starting also within the parties to question some values, to question some main ideas. And so at some point you have a form of reconfiguration that needs to take place.
Are you alluding to that fact you mentioned, that when it's about campaigning, it's also about what do the others think? You talked about the Vlaamsbelang actually appealing to the opponents. So is that what you mean?
Well,
there's fracture.
Okay, so
it's easy for them to switch.
What is your added value as a political party? That's the question you should ask yourself. Of course, you have your some voters that will always be faithful to the party, but this is a trend that we see is now disappearing. That we are political consumer, and as consumer, we are looking at basically the issues that concern us right now, and we choose the party according to our contemporary concerns. So I think yes. I mean, if you look at the Vlaamsbelang, they were very critical about their main competitor, the N-VA, also a nationalist party, also very critical on migration issues, but not tough enough. So they were looking at the numbers, and they saw that eventually the politics that was carried out by the N-VA and the government, they were in government for 5 years now, was actually almost the same than the one we had before. So the contrast wasn't that great. So they still appear as being the only solution or alternative to that type of politics. So yes, they consider politics as a market, and there are some market shares to take, and we will take the market shares from the N-VA that we want, but also the young voters, because we don't know for whom they will vote, because they are new on the market, basically.
And the product is content.
It's content and the embodiment of that content, so the political leaders. And if you mentioned the German SPD or some other parties that are in a crisis right now, we could mention the French conservatives, for instance, LR. They have a leadership issue. Okay, so you have both the content, the ideas, and the originality and the added value of these of the values and the ideas that you're defending, and at the same time, who's actually carrying these ideas and who's the face that you put on this political program. And in the case of the Vlaamsbelang, you had a new and fresh face or faces, and you had a very strong message. So both combined were just perfect and perfectly fitted also to the channels of communication that they were using.
Thank you very much. I think that was a very, very round answer to what ingredients you need to put together to have a winning recipe. Let's call it something. Yeah. Are there now questions? In the public. Do you have questions on the topics, or to Mr. Weigel, do you want to ask now? I think that we can cover 1 to 2 questions, then we need to wrap up because there was a little delay. And well, go ahead. Ali?
I have a very quick question for you just about platforms. Because you mentioned, I think, 4, and was wondering how that differs per country and where to kind of, like, so how to think about what platforms to kind of prioritize, and for what audience, and maybe where you can find that kind of information out. And then sort of a bigger philosophical question, if we don't get to it and chat afterwards, fine. I come from an entertainment background, and I work for Netflix, and looking at what they've done, you've got like the kind of business wars between Netflix and Blockbuster, and that whole, when the digital disruption sort of started in the consumer corporate world, companies kept trying to like blame the consumers for not doing things properly, right? So bands and record labels started suing consumers for stealing music, or Blockbuster didn't like adapt and change, and in fact, there was a moment where Netflix was offering to sell themselves to Blockbuster, and they're like, no, we're gonna be fine, we're just gonna keep doing our thing. They're now completely gone. And I wonder how that sort of translates into politics, because I look at a lot of the political discussions, and a lot of it seems to be blaming the voters, the citizens, for not knowing enough, or media for like not talking about it properly. And on a consumer level, we always think if people are not watching our show or not paying attention to us, we think, what are we doing wrong? Not what are they doing wrong first. And eventually, if you don't adapt to that and you don't go, okay, how do we change? You die. And that seems to me some of the kind of like the lessons of disruption on the consumer side are not being learned on the political side. And so how do you think that this sort of reframing that or borrowing that we might need to do in terms of not getting mad at citizens for getting information on Facebook, but changing that attitude that it's not their fault, it's your fault if you're not getting to them.
So let me suggest I answer the first question, and then I'll transfer this second one to you. Of course, it's a process you need to find. As to politics, for example, one of the students tried to focus on social media analysis in Czechoslovakia, in the Czech Republic, and we couldn't pull enough data because so few MEPs were actually posting stuff. So, but generally, my answer is to analyze the big streams, see what they are doing, take this as a half of your content stream and come up with another half yourself, and try and do a trial and error with which network works. And the main idea is to go to look for the networks where few of the competitors are, because that's where you sometimes get much more reach because you're the only one that actually puts out stuff, and the rest we just decided. And now I'm really interested about what about the answer to this.
I like the comparison and the metaphor. I think part of what we see with traditional political parties is bad entertainment. I do agree, and bad actors, not binge watch worthy probably. I do think that also the channels of communication have changed, and we see that if you're not an early adopter or digital native, then you're lost with Instagram, and having someone else doing it for you will never be the same than to have someone really endorsing the tool, as we see with more and more politicians today. So there's a change going on. But yes, indeed, there's sometimes the tendency to blame the electorate, the voter, also because it's an extreme right party. So it's almost a moral issue at some point that you discover that 20, 25, 30% of your country is actually choosing a almost forbidden political offer. It's not forbidden because it's a democratic party, but there is something that we call a sanitary cord, cordon sanitaire in French. So there is a general, almost a gentleman agreement in Belgium that you should not form a majority with the Vlaams Belang, so because they are not seen as a democratic, whatever that means, democratic party. And especially in the French-speaking part of Belgium, you should not give them some media coverage, and they should not be invited in political debates. They should not, have a microphone in their hand and talk to the general public. That was a very successful strategy, even if it could be questioned as being non-democratic, because as long as a political party is not forbidden, you should not try to exclude it from the public debate. But it did work, because if you don't see a political offer, at some point you will not be interested in what they have to say. Just that in the recent years, and because there was this shift now to another type of media consumption, this type of political party, and especially the leaders that are now there, they are just using other channels of communication. So even if you put a sanitary cord or a protective wall against that political formation, it doesn't work online. Internet is it's sort of an anarchic political battleground. So it's not possible to cover that political offer as it was the case before. So I think it's a little bit what happened. I really like the analogy. It's a little bit what happened with everyone going on Netflix. At some point, blockbusters or videotapes or DVDs were, it was always very boring to go to and to choose what DVD you wanted to watch, and then of course it took some time, and now you have a direct access to a political offer that looks sexy, is new, is fresh, is also disruptive at the same time, and is tackling the issues that nobody talks about. Okay, so I think it's a valid point there, and especially that generation talking to their own generation knows that people are just fed up with traditional political news coverage. So it's a nice way to create a new community of users, and this is also why I was also telling you that they are not only doing political branding or whatever, they are also in the same time doing, the Vlaams Belang is doing a sort of political education, which is actually very dangerous, because they are installing their own political framing on the political debate. So, and as we all know, if we study political communication, it's all about whose framing wins in the end. Okay, so you can look at the same issue, you can you have the more liberal democratic framing of, for instance, the migration issue. This is the one that you see on television in Belgium, for instance. But then once you use other news channels or tools or communication tools or networks, then you have a totally different discourse. And this is also what people are looking for, probably, is a form of plurality, of diversity of opinions that you don't really find anymore in the traditional news channels, magazine, or newspapers.
And we have seen in the analysis, I think it was Auken with the pictures on Instagram. She did do a narrative. She had nice pictures people could relate to, combined with a narrative on climate change. The one top 3 Insta post was actually 5 pictures, and 5 pictures means that she puts efforts into storytelling, and storytelling is a way to tell a story. So there are examples of traditional parties or people not choosing the populist right way to do it, and the data shows already. So let's see what's about to come.
Can I quickly ask, how many within the traditional political parties, how active were they on social media?
Really less active than, I mean, if you look at the numbers, first of all, they did not spend, I would say, enough money, and far less money than the Vlaams Belang did, and which is really a surprise because they saw what happened 5 years before. They saw that the NVA was super successful, and at that time they only spent 300,000 euros on that campaign, and now the Vlaams Belang doubled almost that number. So personally, I don't understand. I don't understand why, seeing all this, seeing the results, seeing the strategy that works, they kept through their, or they stick to their old strategies. So
maybe it's not 25-30% that are on there. It's just that's the only party that was talking to people on that media.
They were very visible, and the idea also is to be, is to create this permanent. Well, there's a permanent campaign. We all know that. Well, obviously not all parties know that, but we know that there's a permanent campaign effort that you need to carry on and you need to maintain, and you need the money for that. You need the content. You need to be also attractive and interesting, and to have new. You were talking about the narrative, to have a permanent narrative going on, and so indeed the money was not there, but also I think the ideas were lacking at some point. What new content do I propose? What are the arguments or the key ideas that I want to fight for instance, or the key values? And this is something that, from my perspective at least, I didn't really witness during this election, at least in Belgium, probably also in France a little bit, and also in Germany with traditional parties. So it's not only about leadership. Leadership is really important, but at some point, in this case, you have leaders that they are trustworthy and in what they say, because that they were fighting for that in the past years, or even as a grassroots movement, for instance. Okay, so it's really it's easy to believe them, but we know that in traditional parties it's sometimes difficult to connect an individual to a cause. So what are you fighting for?
Especially if they don't even show up.
Well, that's of course that's the beginning. Yeah.
Hi, Nicola. I just wanted to ask, leading off from that last question, actually, wanted to ask you a little bit more about what your thoughts are on how fundamentally disruptive social media proficiency is to electoral strategy, essentially. How nowadays, how necessary is it, from the example you've given and from other examples that you're aware of, that you essentially can't be a winner anymore unless you have a social media identity, a cohesive social media identity, as well as your traditional political identity. And how much what is the balance between social media proficiency in proportion to the traditional factors of electoral success? I'm drawing on I'm thinking of other examples. Personally, I'm from the UK, and it's interesting you brought up the Vlaams Belang that I wasn't actually aware of, but in the UK, in the recent European elections, we also have a quite prominent British alt-right figure who he actually joined the UK Independence Party. His name is Carl Benjamin, and he's got a notorious name for himself.
I just need to look at the watch. Do you have an actual question we could draw to?
Yeah, no. I've already given the question. I was giving an example. I was giving this example because with Carl Benjamin, essentially, he didn't have much success at all. Whereas he kind of seems to fit the profile of that guy that said he was kind of independent of Vlaams Belang, but kind of ran alongside them. And I guess there are some extra factors in there where you've got, in the UK, you've got the Brexit Party, whereas the UK Independence Party seems to have fed off the cause of them. And I sort of posit that as a contrasting example, just to ask you about how fundamentally you think this.
But I think, just to go back to that example, I think the Brexit Party was actually the new brand. It was this exciting new political product, basically. And even if you had Nigel Farage, that everyone knows, but then he remains a charismatic figure, and he knows how to use traditional media. And at the same time, as you said to Mark Zuckerberg, he knows how to use Facebook in the same time. So I think that UKIP and the UK Independence Party was almost seen as a declining project, or basically I don't know, a party without a cause anymore, because now everyone is on board of the Brexit Party. So using the example of Carl Benjamin, I don't understand why he actually, I don't understand, there are other reasons, but he probably joined the wrong ship, basically, during that election. So this is my one reason. But then the comparison with the Vlaams Belang is not that evident, because the Vlaams Belang in other countries, you have the same phenomenon. They were using these channels of communication and social media in particular because they needed, for their own survival, for their own existence, to circumvent traditional media because they were blocked. Yes, of course, they were invited from time to time when there was a debate, but the framing on them was always negative, was always depreciative almost. And so I think that's there was a way for them to build a counter narrative to the official media mainstream, the whole the discourse that they use normally, and that made sense for a lot of voters, of youngsters, that even for these voters that actually agree with most of the values both of the Vlaams Belang and of the NVA, for them now the NVA is almost part of the game of the mainstream party. So it's not talking about disruptive politics. They are not rebels anymore, basically. So and so there's also that attraction. And I think that you have both the new brand, the new old brand in that case. You have the channels of communication, and you also have the leaders. And I think in this case, even for someone that never considered voting for the Vlaams Belang, having these new fresh faces, say this as a metaphor, there was something new happening, okay? Because all the other political leaders, we know them for so many years, okay? So and this is something that you see in other countries as well. So there was a momentum, and I'm not sure that, for instance, in 5 years you would have the same results. So this is what happened to the NVA.
Well, what happened is there was a lot of ad spend, there was a good narrative, and whoever does this right the next time, whatever party that is, I think things will repeat according to the narrative. Mm-hmm. I think that's let us take that as wrap up to the evening, and I see that it was a perfect match to connect how to start the process of getting ideas and getting it right. As you said in one of your last sentences, many people did not do it and sit down for a day to just think about what our ideas, what our values, what's the story we actually want to tell. That it happened. So that's where there's now some tools for you, and a very interesting, topic-wise, in-depth view at what happened now in these elections. I thank you very much for being here.
Thanks to all of you for staying that late.
Thanks for the audience. It was quite a long time. You were a very good audience with nice questions, and you engaged a lot. Thank you for that. Thank you for the people who joined online, and thank you for the nice space of Impact Media to host us here with all this live streaming power, and after all, the Protagoras supporting us with also communicating the idea what this meetup is about. Also, thank you for the team of people who helped. Thank you to BSIS and also the students who are with me and got that project going, including at the very top the people, the team who helped to get that event going. So without further ado, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
For your time.